Hello, everyone. Philip Travis here, and I thought I'd introduce you to one of our little dogs. This is Maximus, and Maximus usually, when I'm in my office doing work, making announcements, thanks, Max. He usually comes in there and hangs out with me. He kind of follows me around like a shadow all the time, and he likes his little bed right down there. So that's Maximus. Just thought I'd introduce you to one of our animals. We have a lot of animals here at the house. This week we're looking at the progressive era, and so far, by the way, I think things have been going really well. I think activity in the discussion forum has been good, and I hope everything is looking pretty clear. I hope you're enjoying the video lectures that I provide every week. This week we're going to look at the progressive era, and I have 2 video lectures on this topic, and you'll find those again right there in the content area. And the first lecture is about 28 minutes, and the second one's about 15 minutes. We do have a reading this week, as always, from our textbook, but in addition to that, we have a quiz this week, and that quiz is based on the video lectures. It comes right from the video lectures. So watch those 2 video lectures and take notes while you watch the video lectures. And I pay attention to them because the questions are drawn from the video lecture, and some are more broad than others, and some are really specific to the video lectures. And so I would recommend you watch the lectures, take some notes on them, look through your notes, and then when you go to take the quiz, I would have, because the video lectures are from YouTube, I created them myself, but they're in my YouTube channel. And so you can have them both opened up and like paused while you're taking the quiz. And if you need to like look for something in there, you can kind of jump through and review it if you needed to. But there is a time limit. So there's 10 questions and there's a 20-minute time limit. So you're not going to be able to do that for every question, but you might do it if you need to reference it. So make sure you watch those lectures and take notes on them. And I think if you do that, you'll do really well on the quiz. It's a 10-question quiz. It's worth 20 points. Your grades are weighted in this class, as you know. There's percentages. So it's just a quiz. So hopefully everybody does really well on it. And hopefully everyone does really well on it. But if you don't do well on it, it is just a quiz. And if you don't do well on it, you can reach out to me, and I can explain some ways that maybe you could work on, like, study skills and these types of things. And of course, the quiz will help us in terms of thinking about what we'll expect on our exam next week. So the exam is next week, and it's going to cover the material on the progressive era, the Gilded Age, of course, before it, and then the portion on the United States as a world power. So the Spanish and Philippine-American wars, and the bit I'm not going to include the First World War on this next exam. I'm going to put that on the other one to kind of limit the amount of material on it. So it'll just be the Spanish and the Philippine-American War, things like the annexation of Hawaii and these types of things, which will be on the test. There's a study guide that I've posted for the test. Please take a look at that. What you see on that study guide, and that's in the content area as well. And what you will see on that study guide is 2 potential short identifications that I want you to respond to on the test. And we're talking about, a short paragraph kind of explaining the item. So you can think about those and prepare for those in advance. And then there's a list of terms. And the terms are items that we've been covering in the class that are fair game for multiple choice, true, false type questions on the test. So what I would recommend with that is I would download the study guide, and I would then maybe triple space it and write in the information as best as I understand it or understood it in the study guide, and then you can kind of use the study guide and review the study guide as you're taking the test. Okay, so quiz this week on the video lectures, test next week, covering the material from the Gilded Age, progressive era, and the portion on America becoming a world power, particularly the Spanish and Philippine-American wars between 1898 to 1902. And there's a study guide for that. So we have another little bonus element here. I think this is the first one, actually. Every week, I do these announcements for you, and for watching them, I offer bonus points, factoids, every week. So what I'll do is I will tell you a factoid, a historical factoid that is relevant to what we are looking at in class right now. And then all you have to do is you'll see like an extra credit discussion forum in the content area. So when you go in there, you'll see your normal discussion forum. We do have a discussion this week. There will not be a discussion next week when we have the exam, but there will be one this week. So you'll see an extra credit discussion forum down there, and all you have to do is go into there and just write what the factoid is. I'm going to tell you a historical factoid. Just go in there, explain the gist of the historical factoid, and then what happens is I score that, and you have a bonus point that gets added on to a test score at the end of the term. And, if you do all the bonus points, it usually amounts to somewhere in the way of almost 3 grade points on your final grade. So it is not insignificant. It can really be, and then of course with the, it can really help your grade at the end of the term. This is the factoid. So during the Progressive era, there were 3 progressive presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, and William Howard Taft, and Woodrow Wilson. And that was the order that they were in. Theodore Roosevelt, of course, became president when William McKinley was assassinated. William McKinley was elected to a second term. Vice president was Theodore Roosevelt, and an anarchist shot him in Buffalo, New York in 1901. The 3rd president assassinated in American history at that point. Theodore Roosevelt then became president and became famous as a progressive. He was conserved more in terms of forest land and natural sites like the Grand Canyon, preserved more than any other president in history. The Grand Canyon is today a sort of a natural sort of wonder of the United States that is preserved because of Roosevelt. Had Roosevelt not preserved it as a national park, it would have been exploited by mining companies and destroyed. Roosevelt also was associated with trust busting, of course, breaking up monopolies, the Northern Securities monopoly, the railroad monopoly that J.P. Morgan was being involved in, him and James Hill. Roosevelt fought that, championed breaking up that merger, railroad merger in the Northeast. It was upheld in the Supreme Court. So he becomes famous for trust busting, famous for supporting the passage of things like the Meat Inspection Act, the Pure Food and Drug Act, effectively Theodore Roosevelt's presidency. And of course, a lot of this is driven by grassroots activism too. Women suffrage, women activists, they were also suffragists, of course, but women were some of the foremost advocates for meat inspection as well. But effectively, this period of time, the reason you can, eat a hamburger and not die is because of those types of, or feel reasonably confident that you won't get sick from it and die from it, is directly related to this period of time in history. Well, and here's the factoid. This is the factoid that I want you to tell me. So Theodore Roosevelt had promised that he would, because he didn't, he became president because of the assassination. Then he ran on his own right, and he won in a huge victory in the election of 1904. And he pledged he wouldn't run again. And there were no term limits then, so he even though I think he technically could have run again anyway because the first term was assumed, but. He said, I'm not going to run again, and he decides not to run again, though he would have won. And his successor was William Howard Taft, and Taft was kind of like Roosevelt wanted to sort of lead through Taft, if you will. But Taft started doing things that Roosevelt didn't agree with. He broke up, for example, the U.S. Steel Trust, and that was a trust that Roosevelt thought was a good trust because of manufacturing and so forth. And so Roosevelt became incensed, very angry over this, and in the election of 1912, Roosevelt sought the Republican nomination against Taft. Well, the Republicans nominated Taft over Roosevelt, largely because the Republicans didn't really like Roosevelt. Roosevelt was a guy who went across the aisle. He was a very forceful personality. He was an intellectual. Um, he read a lot. He had a master's degree. Not to say that they didn't like the fact that William Howard Taft was an intellectual too. But Roosevelt could sort of rub folks the wrong way sometimes. He was a very forceful personality. And so they nominated Taft instead of Roosevelt. Roosevelt was incensed, and here's the factoid. Roosevelt in 1912 formed his own Bull Moose Party, is what it was called, the Bull Moose Party. And in the election, Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, would win, but Wilson won largely because the Republicans had become split with Taft and the Bull Moose Party. And this is the factoid. The Bull Moose Party today remains the only third party in modern American history to have gotten more votes, to have received more votes than one of the two main parties. The Bull Moose Party got more votes. Roosevelt got more votes than Taft. The Bull Moose Party got more votes than the Republican Party. And that's the only time that that's happened in modern American history where you had a third party, because third parties, as we know in American history, are not super successful. It's very difficult because of the nature of how the electoral system is set up in the United States. It's not like the way it's set up in, for example, Great Britain, where a third party can be very viable. But in the United States, the Democrats and the Republicans, typically two-party elections, and the third parties usually don't come anywhere close to beating one of those two parties. Theodore Roosevelt's Bull Moose Party, even though Woodrow Wilson became president, Theodore Roosevelt's Bull Moose Party did that, getting more votes than the Republican Party as a third party. A little bit long this week. I'll try to make them shorter in the future. Let's have a great week. I'll look for your factoids. I'll see you in the discussion forum, and let me know if you have any questions.